impose on you some of my predilections, some of my devotions, some of my beliefs in the art of bonsai. And you can do what you will with that. But you're surrounded with what my will has promoted. And so take that into account as you discard or, oh no, that is the way it's done type stuff going on. The truth is that there's a multitude of ways the trees are going to grow. And all of them can be successful. And so right or wrong or any of that, you need a name tag, so you need to get it in the deal. So that's just the way it is. That's the way bonsai is. It's an art form. And so make your choices. And so, but just to kind of simplify the whole thing is that I fertilized 5 times this spring, and I've got 1 more to go at the end of this month. And I use Miracle Grow, which is water soluble, high nitrogenous fertilizer, and the excess runs out of the pot because I use a soil that is particulate, lots of little stones. None of it having to do with stones from Japan, which tend to be not very stony, and they break down and clog the pots. And then with a clogged pot, you get to repot it because you get root rot when it's plugged up, and so you get to repot your trees frequently using akadama or what's the other stuff? Anyhow, all that
Kanuma.
stuff. So Kanuma and akadama and all that miracle stuff. But the real miracle stuff is about the water. Trees need water. And so everything here got watered last night. So everything's fresh and it'll work fine for today, and then tomorrow it gets it again. So every other day, but the soil needs to be particulate. That means lots of little stones in there. No real soil. Soil is the enemy. It's great for vegetables. And Miracle Grow is not great for vegetables. So don't use Miracle Grow in your garden, but it's okay to use it in your bonsai trees because they're a tree and they produce wood. And wood is good, especially the more there is, the more better. And so in bonsai, if you want to really be successful quickly, start with great trunks. Don't start with a little baby, goddammit, and hope that it's going to get to be a great tree because it's a 200-year process and hardly any of us make that. Now, I'm liable to make it because I'm 85 now and things are going well, but I'm a little tippy, as you can see, so I'm not sure about the balance. I'll probably be in one of those carts after a while. And when it comes to repotting and root pruning, I never do it. And so you can save yourself a lot of dying trees in your experience in bonsai by never repotting your trees or root pruning them. Let's put it that way. It's okay to repot a tree, just don't root prune it. Whatever that means. If it needs a bigger pot, put it in a bigger pot. But root pruning is dangerous to trees. It's cutting off roots. It's kind of like cutting off part of your digestive system. Let's just do away with that. See how it works. So anyhow, like I said, this is all kind of contrary to what you read in books and stuff like that, but books were written by people who write books. I'm not sure that they grow bonsais, but they've heard that this is the way you do it. And this is from the horse's mouth, or the horse's whatever, this morning, because this is the way I do it, and we're surrounded with my success or lack of success, or whatever you want to describe it as. So ask me all the questions that you want at any time. What we're here to practice is pine tree pruning. And different pine trees require different kind of pruning type thing. But this is the time of year for the black pines and the red pines. And for me, I do the Scots pines now also, but I don't do Mugo pines or lodgepole pines. Austrian black, I have one and I've never pruned it, so I don't know what to do with it, but I think it's probably a late pruner also. There's always this talk about how many flushes the tree is going to have, and then it sounds to me about kind of like a latrine. I'm not sure what all these flushes are about, but anyhow, what it's describing is whether the tree will grow again following the pruning, and how many times you can expect that. And I have to say that the the best way to expect continual, lots of flushes, if you will, is the fertilizer. The fertilizer feeds the energy of the tree, and if it's short of fertilizer, it's just gonna languish after you prune it. So make sure that you fertilize well after pruning your tree. So anyhow, today I've got two Scotch pines out there, big old trees that I started from 3-year-old seedlings back in 1961, and they're in the ground. All the trees that we're going to prune today are in the ground, so they're really called Niwaki, which is a derisive term that was invented by a bonsai passionate person who said, they're just Niwaki. Okay, do you get the inflection there? It's not really a bonsai. It's, I don't care what it is, whether it's maple or a pine, or it's just a Niwaki. Anyhow, so these are all Niwakis. And I grew them all from little trees or from seedling, and there's black pines, and there's some red pines, and there's Scots pines. And like I said, the lodgepoles have already been pruned, and the mugos have been pruned or haven't been pruned, to let them just do what they want to do. So, and what we want to do is cut off all of the new growth. And so the new growth comes out as a vertical kind of a shoot called a candle, but it isn't a candle at this stage. There's needles coming out of it, so it's not recognizable necessarily as a barren candle, but you're liable to see all sorts of things out there. But it's the new growth that started, and you prune it right down to where that started, leaving the needles below. And the union there, or the node. You'll notice the nodes. That's where the growth started. And that's where there's a multiplicity of buds that will perfuse following the pruning. Now there is also the opportunity for buds to form from the fascicle. And the fascicle is the thing that holds the needles together. And so there's a bunch of fascicles along a branch, and then there's a node. This is where most of the buds are, but there are buds in those needles. But getting them to be active is a fertilizer and good luck kind of thing, which is kind of like, I'll give you a definite maybe that you'll get fascicular growth. But it does happen if a tree is heavy with miracle growth. Miracle growth, readily available, and when you stir it up, it's a nice blue-green color, so it's got to be good. Okay, okay, so I don't care. Yeah.
Is there a specific name for the Miracle Grow? We got a question in from the interview that you did with Maria. Somebody said, what kind of Miracle Grow does he use?
It's
the regular one.
It's in a box about this big, and there's bags. There's big bags in the box, and then there's about 4 lesser bags in the box, so it's complicated to get to it.
So it's not the little balls, it's the green.
No, it's not a granular thing.
Okay.
It's liquid.
Oh, it's liquid.
Yeah, you want to use liquid fertilizers. Any of these things, like time release stuff, are the enemy. Most of them require heat for the release. And it requires heat in the soil, not ambient heat. So it needs 80 degrees, 75, and that's rare in soils on a tree that is trained as a bonsai, because you water it every other day and it keeps that soil cool. And if your soil gets up to 85 degrees, it kills roots, and so don't let that happen. So all of these time-release fertilizers that you think are real convenient because it's going to feed it for a month and a half and I don't have to do anything, you haven't done anything. It's probably going to be in there when you pull it out to repot it, which most people just kind of automatically repot, but of course I don't do that, and I use water soluble, so it's gone. So it's there for a minute, and the white root tips grab it for a minute and get a little suck, and then it's gone. And so the frequency of fertilizing is a lot smarter. This comes from a credible source named Michael Hagedorn, who's written a book on the 50 myths of bonsai, something like that. Anyhow, a new kind of a thing. And anyhow, the most interesting thing to me was his analysis of the importance of frequent fertilizing to guarantee that the plant actually gets some, rather than the promise of a time release deal where you don't know what's happening, and 3 years later you repot it and it's full of little balls of fertilizer, and you wonder, well, huh? What's that about? So, anyhow, yeah.
Have you ever heard of seaweed fertilizer?
I've heard of millions of types of fertilizers. And all of them are great for vegetables because they're nutritious. Whereas high nitrogenous fertilizer is a hokey, man-made, goddammit, and out of petroleum. But oil is, you know, we all use a lot of it. So there's all kinds of different fertilizers, but a lot of them draw flies. I mean, I used to use fish, and you know, I'd have to have my fly removal thing out there to tend to the trees. So anyhow, I've evolved into just miracle. Everything gets Miracle Grow, whether it's houseplant, other plants. I have to admit, I grow some tomatoes. I even give those some Miracle Grow. At my stage, it probably isn't going to hurt to have a little nitrogen going through it. You know, nitrogen is 80% of the atmosphere, and so we get a lot of nitrogen. It's just any other lines of inquiry? So save them and just assault me with them. I'm going to be out there with you guys all day. And I assume you all have pruners, and I'm sure you have the perfect pruners, which happen to be these, which happen to be cheap. They're only $35. And they're the best pruners that you will ever own, in spite of buying these special ones that come from these faraway lands. Actually, these come from that faraway land too, because they're made in Japan. But they're just an excellent pruner, and the nice thing about it, which doesn't affect any of you guys, but for me it's critical, is it adds about 5 inches of length to my approach on my toenails. Okay? So these things are fabulous for a multitude of things. You can use it to cut wire in your bonsai stuff. Just don't cut on the tip where you need it to be really sharp. I mean, you only do pruning right on the tip. And you can also use it gently as a Phillips head screwdriver. Just don't put pressure on the screw because you can bust the tip. But you can at least set it back in there when it comes loose. So anybody, you all should have stuff. So let's proceed out to the tree. Now there's one right here. So I've got some ladders, and I use ladders all the time. I keep seeing this ad on TV that if you're cleaning out your gutters, don't use a ladder. Well, we're pruning trees, so it's okay to use a ladder. We're not cleaning out gutters. I don't know what that whole story is about, but anyhow, this tree is a black pine, one of the ones that I grew from seed. We've got several other black pines in here. They all need pruning, but we've got other trees out there, and so I thought, well, let's go out and then you guys can disseminate. Which I'm not sure what that means, but I can conjure up something, but I won't talk about it. And the red that you see on the weeping form of blue atlas cedar is a fungus that attacks the new growth in the spring. And the best answer to it is to get up there right about now and cut it all off of there, and then it's gone. And then next year it'll be back. But it doesn't show up until you think you're safe. And then about June, suddenly a whole bunch of it kind of dies off from this fungus. There doesn't seem to be a spray that really works on it that I found. So anyhow, that's what that red stuff is on there. So blue apple cedar.
No, the fungus. Yeah, what kind of fungus is it?
That's it kills and makes it red. That's the best I can do.
That's what it is, alright?
Yeah, that's what it is.
It
kills that little branch, and then the needles turn red. It's that type of fungus.
Alright.
So anyhow, we'll go out to the pruning ground, but like I said, if you want to work on a tree here, it's really okay. Okay? Some places it's all right to let them just fall on the ground because I'll just rake them up. And by the way, I put all of my prunings back in Puget Sound. Okay, which is against the law, but it will save the salmon because it produces food. And So all of these laws to save the salmon, they don't talk about people cleaning their beaches off and never putting organic stuff on the beaches and stuff like this. And they wonder where the salmon went. Well, so I feed the beach with all my clippings, and I've got, well, right now the salmon are out a ways, but anyhow, so